What's going on, comic fans? It is Mike from the Hardcover Comic. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's having a good time. Hope it's warming up for everyone the same way it is here up in Canada for myself. I'm really enjoying it so far. Really nice warm up. But today we're here to talk about fantasy comic books, swords and sorcery, RPG themed, all sorts of fun stuff like that. I'm going to talk about 5 titles that I highly recommend reading. I think they're must read stories if you are a fan of this genre. Of course, there are plenty more. So hopefully we'll get to talk about them in the future as well. But let's dive into these 5 that I wanted to talk about today. Before we get started, though, swinging our swords around, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell to let you know whenever we post a new video, go live with the new stream, whatever it may be. We really appreciate it, really help it. We love, we're almost at 6K. It's crazy. We were just hitting 5. It's absolutely amazing. We love that you guys are enjoying our content so much. Be sure to like the video as well if you do enjoy it. It helps us out a lot. Check out our Patreon. We're doing hardcover comic giveaways, omnis, absolutes, digital codes throughout the month, stuff like that. We might be doing some Herring and Robinson gift certificates, fun stuff happening. Check out the link down in the description below for more details on that. And check out Dr. Squatch, man. Now's, you're going to start getting sweaty now. It's summer. The heat's coming. The swamps are developing in various areas and pits of your body. Time to get some good-ass soap. This month they had a nice cold brew. Can you imagine walking around smelling like an ice mocha? Now, of course, if people could get close enough to smell you, they would appreciate it, but they can't now, so fair enough. But it's a good time, man. At least at home, walking around smelling like an iced coffee. It's a great way to enjoy the summer. So check out Dr. Squatch with the link down in the description below. You'll get free shipping for the entirety of your subscription. You can change your scent whenever you want to. It's awesome. They're great. At least check out their website and their ads. But yeah, all right, the first series I wanted to talk about is an epic one. This is huge. There are very hardcore fantasy fans that absolutely love Elric and I hope I'm saying this right again, I've never heard the word before, Melniboné. I imagine it's got a French little twist to it at the end there. But Elric, in front of me, I've got these 5 hardcovers published by Titan Comics that sort of collect the saga of Elric as published in the 80s. So there have been a whole bunch of comic adaptations of Elric. Of course, Elric started as a set of Michael Moorcock novellas that were in this science fantasy magazine, and then of course there were novels that came out of that that Michael Moorcock also wrote, expanding the universe and sort of giving Elric an origin and showing you where Stormbringer came from, and so we're seeing the adaptation of all that stuff in comic format here. Elric first made his appearance in the 70s in Spirit #1, Philip Drouillet. And then, we saw Elric show up in Conan, number 14 and 15, written by Roy Thomas with artwork by the sensational Barry Windsor Smith. Was the first appearance of him in sort of, more popular comic book medium titles and formats and whatnot. But anyway, back to the books we're talking about here. So Elric it is the story of Elric, who is he's the 482nd emperor of Melniboné, which is the dreaming city, this gorgeous, stunning place where people all hate life, and nobody's really all that happy, and things are not going well. And Elric especially is not happy. There's a lot of incest going on, and Elric wants to find himself. He wants to find his purpose. He wants to explore the new kingdoms and see what is in the universe and maybe beyond. This is an awesome story. It's a great fantasy story with a character who you get to see develop, lose his powers, and regain his powers and his confidence and his understanding of the world and his place within it. He interacts with a whole bunch of characters along the way. Of course, in any high fantasy story, you get to see many characters, huge sea voyages and epic wars and raids on kingdoms. It's fantastic. There's magic, there are demons, there are gods, there are summonings, there are sacrifices made here. It's really an epic tale with so much blood and so much sorrow, and so much fantasy goodness. This was quite a ride to go through. Across these 5 hardcovers, you get all of it's written by Roy Thomas with a few artists working their way through here, like P. Craig Russell, Michael T. Gilbert, John Dersema, a whole bunch of artists. First Comics would publish these mini-series. There were about 8 mini-series that they did. And then P. Craig Russell and Roy Thomas, through, I believe it was DC at the time, did these OGNs. I mean, you're getting sort of a combination. And what's really cool is, you know, the next set of mini-series from First Comics will tell you what happened in that OGN, fill in the blanks a little bit. And of course, as the universe and the multiverse of Elric starts to expand, you get other titles like Corum and other series now that Titan Comics has started publishing within the Michael Moorcock Library universe, which is very, very cool. The Corum stuff, I know Mike Mignola did the artwork for, so it's great. I do like the artwork in these books themselves. The coloring is a little light at times. I appreciate it for what it is. It's nice. It's very nice. The artwork is very detailed. Of course, guys like P. Craig Russell, Michael T. Gilbert are incredible artists. I love looking at their work. But it's a very great. This is. I apologize, guys. I've been going on for a long time, but it's really, really fantastic. I really enjoy Elric. It's a huge, sweeping, epic tale, and the fact that it was written in the '80s, it's not overexposed with exposition, but you get that nice feeling of, you know, a sort of more classic fantasy style book as opposed to some of the newer ones I'm going to talk about now. So I highly recommend picking these up. These are not too expensive. They range from $15 to $25 per volume. There are 5 for Elric. Rat Queens. You know what I love about fantasy is how much fun it can be. I love when fantasy is fun, and I like it when it's serious too, but when it's fun, it's the best because there's so much great humor you can do in a fantasy setting with all these crazy creatures. And Rat Queens is a spectacular example of that. In front of me, I have the first deluxe edition. The second one is currently at Matt's house in one of the boxes from In Stock Trades that I ordered. I'm not going to get in, you know, I'm not going to give my opinions on sort of the controversy that surrounded the series and some of the creators involved with this series. Honestly, I don't really care. I'm just here to talk about comic books. If you don't like what happened, just avoid the comic book. But Rat Queens. Rat Queens is about these 4 characters. They are a troupe called the Rat Queens. They're mercenaries. You have Hannah, Betty, Violet, and Dee, and they are all lovable and fantastic characters that I can't get enough of. They each have a very distinct personality, and the way they all work together is fantastic. It's awesome to see them work as a unit and see that teamwork and sort of how they're able to, you know, at times let their weaknesses go, let their downfalls be forgiven, and then at other times it's just unacceptable for shit to go wrong. There's a lot of cursing, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of suggestive sexual things in this book. There's straight up nudity in here, but it's such a fantastic time. So the Rat Queens, essentially, like I said, they're mercenaries who like to get into trouble. They're assigned missions. They do their missions, and things usually go wrong. There's usually some sort of plot against them. And in this first book, we get to see that unravel. We get introduced to the world around them, the constables, and the various characters like Gary, who's always just putting his nose where it don't belong. There's a lot of really fantastic recurring jokes within the series. The action is fantastic. It's very, again, it's swords and sorcery, right? You'll have some bows and arrows going off. You'll have orcs getting their heads sliced off. You'll have lightning bolts flying through the air, demons being awakened. It's great. It's got everything you love about the sort of Dungeons and Dragon style of world. Overall, I really recommend checking out Rat Queens, especially if you want to change of pace, if you want something a little more lighthearted and comedic while still being dark and very much mature. These are mature characters doing mature things in a with a rather mature sense of humor. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. You get amazing artists working on the book like Stepan Sage and Tess Fowler. I mean, it's beautiful to look at. It's just a great time overall. I can't recommend it enough. I'm very excited to get that second deluxe edition and dive into it. I'm very excited for it. So be sure to check out Rat Queens. Okay, people, throwing in some Valiant here. Britannia. I know what you're thinking. Again, it's Valiant. Valiant is a superhero comic publishing publisher, but not really. Like I've mentioned before, they sort of have that veil on top of them, but that's not necessarily how you can look at their books. I mean, Britannia is a book that does not involve really any of the Valiant Universe characters. It focuses on a character named Antonius Axia, who was created by Peter Milligan and Juan Jose Rip, who do the first 2 arcs of this story, and then the third arc is still by Peter Milligan with artist Robert Gill taking over the Lost Eagles of Rome. Stunning. I mean, all 3 of these miniseries are beautiful, all with a different flavor to them a little bit. Antonius actually has a slave, his partner, who's awesome. They have a really great rapport together. They sort of have a little back and forth, bouncing off each other. If they were a TV show, if this was ever a TV show, it would be something like one of those BBC detective series like Sherlock, or Jonathan Creek or something, where you have these two characters that bounce off each other. It's great for that reason, but it's a very, very serious and mature book that focuses a lot on sorcery and magic and history. Of course, it takes place in 60 A.D. Emperor Nero is ruling Rome, and Antonius is basically a man who was recruited by these Vestas, and these Vestas are essentially the women who keep Rome afloat with their magic. They keep the fires of Rome aflame, basically, and they keep all the evil spirits away. And Emperor Nero has it out for Antonius, and Antonius is trying to help the Vestals. He gets recruited by them, and he becomes the first detectioner of Rome. So he's the first detective in history, at least in the Valiant universe, 60 AD. So this is centuries before Elric of Dacia is even a thing in the Valiant universe, which is really cool. Like I said, it's really just a detective book set in this era with a little bit of sorcery and magic and voodoo involved. It's really, really cool. It's a great fantasy novel, and with the 3 stories, you get a different sensation with each story, a different flavor of story as well. It doesn't feel repetitive at all. This is the deluxe edition in front of me. It collects all 12 issues in an oversized hardcover format. Absolutely beautiful book. It should still be available. At least it is in Canada, last I checked. And it's fantastic. The best way to read it. The artwork is beautiful. Juan Jose Rip, Robert Gill. They're two phenomenal artists, and they suit the title beautifully, especially Juan Jose Rip. That dude's artwork is unbelievable. But I highly recommend checking out Britannia from Valiant Comics. One of the few pink books I have on my bookshelf is I Hate Fairyland. This is the first deluxe edition published by Image Comics. This comic is written and drawn. Everything is done by Scotty Young, who is, of course, a beloved Marvel Comics variant cover artist who is now also crushing it with the series Middle West. I Hate Fairyland ran for 20 issues total. It is collected across 2 of these deluxe editions. My second one is at Matt's house right now, unfortunately, but I must say, the I Hate Fairyland deluxe editions are some of the most beautiful books. I love the pink. There was a black variant for this volume. I chose the pink because, honestly, there aren't that many chances for you to get a pink book. And the pink is very misleading. The whole aesthetic of I Hate Fairyland is intensely misleading. It follows this character named Gertrude, who as a child gets sucked into Fairyland and is given a quest to find the key that will let her leave Fairyland. 27 years later, she has not found the key. She isn't aging physically, but mentally she has become a 40-year-old woman, and she's not happy with the situation she's in, and she wants to get the hell out of Fairyland. Guys, as you can tell, I'm gleaming with joy because it is one of the most fun books I've ever read in my life. It's an absolute thrill ride with beautiful artwork, insane colors that are vibrant and playful and childish, with ridiculous things happening like the moon being shot. It's so much fun. The story, like I said, in general is what I mentioned. Things, of course, take twists and turns, and the general plot evolves, as does Gertrude a little bit, but not really. And it's an absolutely fantastic ride for 20 issues. A lot of it at times feels like an anthology where you'll jump in from one story to another, and Gertrude's doing something entirely different, especially after like the first 5 issues. But I loved it. I loved every second of it. It's so much fun. The narrators in the first arc, I don't want to ruin it. Go check out I Hate Fairyland. It's a lot of fun. Do not read it with your kids. There is blood. There is violence. There is not cursing, though. So, if you're okay with graphic violence, you can show this to your kids. But there is definitely a lot of violence. All the cursing is like Muffin Fluffer and Piff and Fluff. So it's great for that reason. The lettering is fantastic. It's a lot of fun. Oh, and of course, I can't forget Gertrude's partner, Larry, who is suffering severely with depression. This book holds a warm place in my heart, for real. It's so much fun. It's so different, and it takes the darkest things in life and just makes fun of them and puts a nice, colorful pastel on them. Can't recommend it enough. I Hate Fairyland. Wrapping things up with The Wrath of Eternal Warrior, another Valiant Comics title. This is a fantastic series because it is a series that anyone can jump into without ever having read The Eternal Warrior. You don't need to know anything about it. In general, in terms of how this flows within the Valiant universe, this comes after an event called the Book of Death. You can read the Book of Death if you want to. You don't have to. Robert Venditti goes through everything within the pages of the Wrath of the Eternal Warrior. You do also get a little breakdown and synopsis at the start of what Gilad's history is a little bit and what his power set is. So you get, really quickly, exactly, you know who Gilad is. You don't know exactly what's going on because that's the purpose of the story. But yeah, you get an idea of who Gilad is and what you're dealing with this character. Gilad Anipada is the eternal warrior within the Valiant universe. He is the fist and stone of Earth. When the Earth calls, he answers the call and protects it. And he protects this character called the Geomancer, who returns every once in a while, and is essentially, Gilad's ward. He needs to protect the Geomancer. Not going to spoil how that usually goes. But anyway, in this story, we get to see what happens to Gilad when he dies. It's always been a mystery. At times oftentimes he doesn't die and he heals himself and whatnot. But we get to see what happens when he dies and when he goes beyond the veil of life and death. It's quite a story. It's written by Robert Venditti with artwork by quite a few people: Raul Allen, Juan Jose Rip, and Robert Gill. All beautiful, amazing artists, two of which I've already mentioned with Britannia. Raul Allen does some incredible work here. It's so beautiful and badass, the poses he puts Gilad in. And just in general, the story of Gilad having to essentially leave paradise whenever he wants to return to Earth. He has to leave all of his children that have died and his wife who has died and decided to stay with him. And he has to leave that where he could stay forever and eat and drink and not have to worry about anything. And he has to cross through what is essentially hell and fight hordes of demons and fight this giant named Humongous to get to Earth and then die again on Earth. It's such a great story about understanding the character of Gilad and what he goes through. And reading a story like this and then looking back at other Valiant stories I've read where Gilad has shown up and you're like, oh, this guy, you start to really empathize with him after reading something like this. And you're like, this dude, whenever he's on Earth trying to help people, like he doesn't need to be, he could be doing something amazing right now without having to worry about anything, but he decides to come back and make this place better. I really, really love this story. It's got spectacular artwork. The writing and dialogue is brilliant. The story is really, really intriguing. And it goes far beyond that, right? What I just mentioned is just the first arc. There are a few more arcs here that show a whole lot more depth to Gilad and his family and the situation he's in and how it ties into the past of the Valiant universe as well. It's really wonderful. There are other characters that show up here. Exo Manowar shows up for a second, a powerful second, but he does show up here. And like I said, it's Valiant Comics, sort of this third-party superhero, but it's not. This is a straight-up fantasy book. If you could throw any other character in here and build the same world around him, it's just beautiful. I love Wrath of the Eternal Warrior. Robert Venditti, Raul Allen, Juan Jose Rip, Robert Gill. Stupendous job, truly. That's it, guys. I mean, 5 books. I've rambled on about them a whole bunch. I love fantasy. I've always been a huge fantasy fan. In fact, I don't really read many novels, but when I do read a novel, it's a fantasy one. So I'm looking for fantasy novel suggestions. Please let me know down below what novels you would recommend for a fan of fantasy, aside from like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, of course, the mainstream books. Let me know, please. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We post content regularly. Top 5s, overviews, reviews, hauls, things like that. Live streams, of course, as well. Check out our Patreon. If you're interested in winning a hardcover comic, it could be an omnibus, an absolute, multiple deluxe editions, custom binds, custom bind gift certificates, craziness, all sorts of stuff. There's a link down in the description below for more details. Lastly, check out Dr. Squatch. It's getting hot. You're getting sweaty. You're getting stinky. Time to get some nice soap. Dr. Squatch has you hooked up. They are also selling hand sanitizer and other men's healthcare grooming products. Check them out with the link down in the description below. The hardcover comic and Dr. Squatch is going to hook you up with free shipping for life, as long as you want it. So to use the link down in the description below, and that's what you'll get. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. This was Mike from the Hardcover Comic. Hope you guys stay safe and do well. You stay classy, Internet.